We have Vivek Rege, who is the founder and CEO at VR Wealth Advisors, joining us to help you understand the various nitty-gritties of the scheme. Hi, very good evening, Vivek, and thank you so much for giving your time to ET Now. Firstly, we would like to know that the National Pension Scheme is considered one of the best retirement savings schemes offered by the government. Could you briefly describe how exactly it works? What are the options one can choose when deciding to invest in the NPS?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for being on the show. I agree. NPS is one of the best options in the country today for a retirement benefit. So typically this comes into the retirement benefit scheme at a higher level, and within the retirement benefit scheme, there is something known as a defined contribution plan. Okay, so essentially a person is expected to contribute, right, towards the retirement kitty, which we also call as a nest egg, right? Now, this particular contribution essentially has to be done by a person while he's earning during his active years of income to create a kitty which will help this particular investor to distribute that same kitty when he retires, right? Now, this particular scheme, is one of the best schemes. The reason being that it is one of the lowest expense scheme on the globe. We don't have any scheme in this world which is so low at an expense ratio. And therefore, we have one of the top best fund managers in the country to manage these schemes. Therefore, NPS at a whole level becomes a very good proposition for any person to kind of start contributing to it. So let me explain you how it works. You open an NPS account, right? An NPS account can be opened through various channels as well. But the primary purpose is that when you open an NPS account, you open primarily an account known as a Tier 1 account. A Tier 1 account is an account in which you invest into this particular account. There are withdrawal restrictions from this account essentially for you to withdraw. The withdrawal only starts from the age of 60. Okay. Before that, if a person needs to withdraw, it is known as a premature withdrawal, and there are a few restrictions, as far as the premature withdrawals are concerned. So what happens during this phase? You are essentially accumulating through a regular contribution for your retirement kitty, which is participating in a market-linked environment, which is just like any other mutual fund, but it comes at a much, much lower expense ratio. And therefore, if you have the best fund managers in the country with a lower expense ratio, the probability that the funds will grow faster is much higher. You also have something known as a Tier 2 account, in which you can contribute. There is no restriction for withdrawal, right? But a Tier 1 account is mandatory. When you open an NPS account, Tier 1 account is mandatory. You can invest as low as 500 rupees, but in a year you have to invest overall 1,000 rupees. So 500 into 2 is 1,000, and that's how you can keep the account active. Once you open the account, you have to choose between the asset classes. So there are primarily 4 asset classes. One is equity, one is government securities, one is corporate bond, and the 4th is alternate asset. Now, when you understand these asset classes, there are 2 choices which you can do. One is that if you are a new investor who may not really understand what is equity, what is government securities, what is corporate bond, okay, what is alternate, the best way is to look at something known as a kind of a passive strategy to invest, okay, which is actually known as auto. So auto has 3 options for you. One option being a life cycle 75, which means you can invest up to 75% in equity, and that over a period of time, based on your age, the equity component starts coming down. The second is life cycle 50, where you start with a 50% equity, and as you age, the 50% starts coming down. And the third is life cycle 25, where you invest maximum 25% in equity, and over a period of years, it starts tapering down. If you are a seasoned investor, you understand investments, you understand what and how to deal with it. You can also go for something known as an active strategy, where you choose how much equity you need up to maximum 75%. The balance, which is the government securities, the corporate bond, you can also invest 100%. So in case you want to go defensive, you can put 100% into debt, which is the corporate bond and the government security. If you want to go really aggressive, you can go up to 75% in equity. The balance has to go into government securities or the corporate bond, essentially. Correct? Now, what happens when you are doing this is that you actually set an asset allocation for growth over a longer period of time. Each asset class will have its own rate of return, which will vary over a period of time. But on a longer frame, you can expect a reasonable growth rate from the asset allocation choice you make.
Okay, just to brief it up for our viewers, NPS is to be seen as a retirement fund which you prepare for your retirement. There are various options available, like in the case of mutual fund, you can decide what kind of a quantum, whether you want to go for an equity, whether you go for a corporate side. For the debt side as well, you can actually decide in this particular scheme as well where you want to allocate your money. In this, you have two options, tier 1 and tier 2. Vivek just did touch upon that, but Vivek, you did touch upon mutual fund aspect as well, how the expense ratio in NPS scheme is the least one when it compared to on a global basis, and we have various options available in NPS as well. Right, we have the chart prepared. We'll just flash it up for our viewers. But on what basis you should choose the manager of the NPS, and should past returns be the only determining factor when you are choosing any of these NPS schemes, and which NPS provider has consistently outperformed the others if you have done such kind of a comparison?
Yeah, sure. So, see, primarily there are two ways one can look at a fund manager. Definitely, performance is very, very important. But what is more important is the consistency in performance. Okay. And when I say consistency, is that over the period or the measurement period, the fund manager is able to beat a certain benchmark consistently. And that is where we say that the consistency becomes very, very paramount, because you don't want the returns to be distributed in a way which doesn't give you a consistent performance over a period of time. So that is number one. Number two is that the size and the scale of asset manager, which is the asset what the asset manager is managing, correct? The higher the asset manager is managing the asset, the lower is going to be the expense ratio for the fund he is managing. And primarily that benefits you as an investor. So if you look at only these two metrics, one is the returns and its consistency, and second is the asset under management. The higher the asset under management, the better it is. The higher the consistency, better it is. So therefore, if these two metrics are tracked closely, then in my view, HDFC as a pension manager is coming out to be consistently an outperformer. And when I say that, these are asset classes in which we have to see, because there are four asset classes, as I said. So if we start with equity, HDFC Pension has outperformed consistently over the last 7 years, even over the last 5 years, right? So it kind of shows you a consistency with this particular fund manager. Even if we come to the non-equity, which has come to the corporate, again, we see HDFC Pension Fund managing this and outperforming consistently. Again, on a 5-year as well as on a 7-year basis, you see the outperformance from this fund manager. A slight different view we see when we look at GSECs, which is the government securities. In government securities, LIC pension fund is looking more consistent as compared to the others. So by the way, there are 7 fund managers who are managing actively in the NPS space, out of which HDFC out and out is looking to be an outperformer across equity and debt, barring GSET, where LIC pension fund is outperforming. By the way, HDFC asset under management is roughly about 28,000 odd crore, and the next to it comes SBI, which is about 23,420 crores. The difference between HDFC and SBI is not very high, but if we really look at outperformance, HDFC is shaping out to be better.
Thank you so much for highlighting which schemes are really performing well over the years and doing that comparison for us as well. But Vivek, if we see FY23, that's going to be a bit of a challenging year for NPS, right? Because the bond yields are already going up quite substantially. They are expected to go up further, and this can erode and impact the debt-heavy portfolios. On the other hand, even equities are not giving that kind of great returns. Should investors worry about the short-term trends in the NPS, given the fact that the NOEs are going to have a hit? And could you just point out the years in the past where there has been an underperformance, and over the years, what kind of a return can an investor expect from these NPS schemes?
So I agree that FY23 is going to be a challenging year, especially on equity as well as on the debt. But on the debt, we see this challenging more because the yields are moving up. And when the yields move up, the NAVs fall. So I still don't feel it is a kind of important to see a short-term trend. In fact, one, if you are in an investment mode, the accumulations are actually happening at lower and lower levels, if you look at it. So as long as you are in an accumulation mode, I don't see the short-term performances, the short-term trends will really matter. But one should be careful when you are having a debt-heavy portfolio. Let's say that you have a 100% government security portfolio. Now, something like that will actually mean that your 1-year rate of return is actually negative, which has happened in the past 1 year. So one needs to be aware about it, that when you are making an allocation, just make sure that you are not getting too much into the government securities per se, because that's the most volatile segment on the debt which you will see when the yields are going up. Yeah. So as far as the overall rate of return is concerned, if you look at a long range return in an NPS product, okay, if you have an equity, correct, typically on a 5-year basis, the equity has given about 11.5% rate of return, which is not too bad if you look at it from a longer term perspective, right? But what if you are not an aggressive investor, and if you need a little bit of more cushion from debt, right? So when we look at purely debt schemes, and I'm quoting corporate bond here, the returns over the past 5 years has been in the range of 7.5%. Which is also decent, right? So what is also happening is that over the past 5 years, we have seen the debt funds performing better. But yes, in the last 6 months, there has been a pressure on which, because of the rising yields, the NAVs are coming down. And therefore, if you are a very conservative investor, just be mindful about it, that there will be pressure on the debt part of the portfolio. For that, you need not do a knee-jerk, but just be mindful about it, that there will be pressure, and short-term necessarily doesn't mean that this is going to happen on long-term. So you need not really magnify this or extrapolate it beyond a point. As the yields settle down, you will see the performance coming back in debt funds as well.
Okay, so one should really look at the longer term perspective. But Vivek, we are really out of time. So here's my last question to you, and we would like to have a quick answer, because when it comes to taxation, from an investor point of view, what is the effective taxation on the proceeds from the NPS? And if I'm going to invest and looking forward to invest in NPS, what kind of a benefits should I be looking at?
So see, NPS is a retirement benefit scheme. It comes under EEE, which means when you invest, there is absolutely no tax on that. When you are earning on that particular product, there is no tax on it. At the time of exit, right? At the time of exit, essentially what happens is that 60% of the money you can always commute, which means you can take tax-free in hands, right? 40% is what you need to invest into an annuity product. There are different annuity options available, but the bottom line is that when you invest in annuity, again, it is not taxed, but the return on that particular annuity or the income what you get on annuity is taxable according to your tax bracket. So that's how an NPS product will work. Essentially, it is a retirement benefit scheme where you have to create a pool of your nest egg, right? That nest egg then is invested into an annuity, which is a pension product. And pension product gives you a certain income, which is known as a pension. That particular pension amount is taxable in your hands, provided you are in a taxable bracket, right? If you are not in a taxable bracket, that annuity will not be taxable in your hands.